In today's 24/7 news cycle, the homeless are thought of as a spectacle,
people as talent.
a political pawn, a piece of furniture in everyday life.
By using homeless people as props.
Someone's monetary value is inextricably connected to who they are as a person.
I'm really rich.
I'm gonna make you work for your dollars. I don't want a poor person. Does that make sense?
What do you think of when you picture a homeless person? A drug addict? An old man with a shaggy beard begging for money? Being homeless may not be what you think.
So we had a house and we had a bakery, and both my parents were working full time, and my dad was like running the bakery like crazy. And through a series of events, we ended up losing a lot of customers because some people were working there, cough cough, my mother, love her dearly, but she wasn't good with people back then and just kind of rotten. People didn't like her, so they stopped coming, stopped buying our stuff. So we lost the bakery, and then we lost the place, and we had nowhere to go. So we packed everything up and found somewhere outside.
Reality is that homelessness lives closer to all of us than we would like to admit. 3/4 of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. That's one bad break from disaster.
Boy, it was a series of bad decisions on my part that I could see it coming, but it was a little disillusioned thinking that I was going to be able to make things work out. And essentially one decision after another led to being evicted from the townhome that I was in. Didn't have the funds or the finances to re-rent somewhere else. So that's when I became, the sign was on the door and I couldn't get into the apartment. At that point, I was homeless.
Yeah, definitely a lot more difficult for them, because I'm sure that like through the entire time they couldn't believe it. I'm positive they were just there like, how did we let this happen kind of a thing. And I know I've talked to both of them about it, and they felt like failures basically because of the entire thing.
Shane's family was evicted from their home when he was 9 years old. His family spent the winter living in the woods in a broken down RV without running water or electricity.
Yeah, really, really cold. Luckily, we didn't have crazy snowfall by the time we managed to find a place before crazy shit happened. But like, we had the frost, like bad, definitely woken up to like really, really below freezing temperatures and everything.
But I was employed throughout the time. So it was, essentially living out of a car. All the possessions that I could take that I really needed, I packed into this old Ford Taurus. I never want to have to bathe in a gas station bathroom ever again. I don't want to have to sift through my car and find out what clothes I'm going to wear that day. I don't want to have to find what parking lot I'm going to park in that night. When it gets cold, man, it gets cold. It gets tough.
It's become increasingly difficult for homeless people to live on the street in recent years. In 2016, Governor Cuomo signed an executive order requiring local governments to remove homeless people from the streets and into shelters, by force if necessary, once the temperature drops to below 32 degrees. And in Rochester, Tent City, a years-old homeless encampment has been removed by Spectrum, forcing dozens to seek new shelter. But while efforts like these to force homeless people into housing have good intentions, it may not be the simple solution many people tend to look for.
You hear a lot of terrible things about shelters, that shelters are dangerous places, that they're full of drugs and drug dealers, that people will steal your shoes, and there's bed bugs and body lice, and yeah, unfortunately a lot of those things are true.
Those things actually happen.
Yes.
The effects of being homeless carry an even heavier burden when it comes to children. Only 51% of homeless children met statewide standards for reading, according to a study done in 2012. These children are twice as likely to have a learning disability, and are more than 4.5 times more likely to drop out of school when compared to a high-income family. Rochester City School District has been facing issues with the homeless rate rapidly increasing in recent years. According to Democrat and Chronicle, the number of homeless students in the RCSD has gone up 46% since 2011, meaning about 2,500 children were homeless in some sense in the 2016-17 school year. What fuels this problem, in cities such as Rochester, is often parents struggling with addiction.
It was a lot of gas stations, convenience stores, getting cleaned up, getting into work a little bit early. It was frustrating. It was, at the time, and what led that is I had a gambling addiction and also a opiate addiction, which we see a lot in the news now. So those two things were my primary concern, was the living the lie of addiction was my ultimate focus.
Addiction is rampant among homeless populations. Studies show that 38% of homeless people abuse alcohol, and 26% abuse other drugs. It's one of the driving causes for homelessness across the country.
Like, how the fuck do you survive when everything in your life has just blown itself away and it's just you? You're all alone. There's nothing. You have nothing. So you look to the next thing to do. Like, some people, unfortunately, can be drugs. It can be bad things. But that's how they get through their day-to-day lives. It's not because of a failure on their part necessarily, so much as like looking for an out, looking for a way to escape the harsh reality.
Unfortunately, this propagates the stereotype we often see of the homeless. It's difficult to achieve stability while struggling with addiction.
I was able to help my children, but I chose not to. I chose to use my money to go to a casino thinking that I'm going to make more money and everything's going to be fine. I chose to buy pills, because I felt like I needed that. The withdrawal from pill addiction is horrid, yet it's temporary. Yet again, those lies that you tell yourself, say it's going to be okay. One more time, just one more day, one more week. We'll get through this. You'll be off this stuff, and you'll be fine. You'll take your next check, and everything will be great. But then you get your next paycheck, and you end up making the same mistakes again with it.
Studies show that mental illnesses like bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and depression are linked to alcohol and drug abuse, which is another driving cause for homelessness. Illnesses like depression can have devastating effects on individuals without support or the ability to seek help. In a survey of 330 homeless adults, 34% had attempted suicide.
In August of 2011, I tried to kill myself, and I had said enough's enough. I was done. I felt like I was done causing people enough pain. I felt like I was just a big burden in the world and society and my family's and friends' lives, and I felt like everybody would be better off without me. That was a strong, overwhelming feeling, and I just felt like the world would be better off without me because I kept messing up. Right towards the end, I apologized to my son, one of my sons, and his response to me was, "I love you, Dad, no matter what."
We can all help the homeless crisis by changing our perspective on homelessness. Through the media, people have settled into stereotypes about the homeless.
When people think homeless, they think of like an old man, long hair, long beard, dirty, smelly, just on like a sidewalk in a city or something like that. And yes, that is a homeless person. They've probably got it a lot worse because people treat each other like shit.
I hear conversations, and I hear people make comments about homeless people, and it ranges. There's some people have a lot of compassion and understanding. Some people don't realize how close and how normal and ordinary somebody's life could have been before maybe a series of bad decisions led them to be homeless. And there are a lot of folks like that, sleeping on other people's couches, living from place to place, living out of their cars. It's not uncommon, and I don't think it's understood just how, I don't want to say rampant, but how many people there are that don't have an official address that they can call home.
What it comes down to is treating people like people, trying to make a difference instead of treating them like a spectacle. There's been homeless for as long as there's been civilization. There exists a vicious cycle in our society, and likely there always will. Despite that, we can work to improve our communities and put pressure on our representatives in government to work towards solutions for the plights the homeless face. Until then, bear in mind the human beings at the heart of the issue.